the motherboard is characterized by, there are three factors. They are form factor, chipset and processor socket. It is the main component which will be mounted vertically on the motherboard, inside or on the processor socket. So that is the one component that is called microprocessor. See, when we are using UPS system, see, as we are working with the computer system, if there is sudden failure in the main power, our system is going to switch off or shut down automatically. Dear students, welcome to Computer Science classes. I am Ravi Kumar KR, lecturer in Computer Science, Vidhyaashram PU College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. Student, let us start our revision classes chapter wise from hereafter. And here today we will talk about the chapter 1, that is typical configuration of computer system. So here in this chapter we are going to learn the hardware component of computer system, especially inside a CPU. So inside a CPU we have a main board that is called motherboard, and we are going to talk about what is a motherboard and different types of motherboard and different components on the motherboard, and those things we are going to discuss in this chapter. And here let us start with the definition. What is a motherboard? So motherboard is a main board, or is a system board, or planner board, or logic board. So we call the motherboard with different names. That is, it is a main board or system board, planner board, or logic board. So it is a main printed circuit board, so what we call as PCB. So a motherboard is the main component of your computer system or CPU, and here it is called as PCB, printed circuit board, found on computers and other expandable system, and it holds many of the electronic components of the system, such as central CPU and memory, and provision for connector for other peripherals. So what is the meaning of this? So here this is a motherboard. It is a printed circuit board, and over it there are many electronic components are mounted on it. So that is why it is called as a motherboard. So in general, motherboard is a printed circuit board, and there many electronic components are mounted on it. So, and different electronic components such as CPU and other memory devices and so on. And it has an option for connecting different computer peripherals. So a motherboard contains the processor and other components. So it also contains the main electronic component of a computer system, that is microprocessor. So there is a place for microprocessor to fix on the motherboard. So in general, what is a motherboard? Motherboard is a printed circuit board where we can mount different electronic components on it. So for example, maybe microprocessor and memory devices and CPU and so on. So this is the definition of motherboard. In the next slide, let us see what are the characteristics of motherboard. So here the motherboard is characterized by, there are three factors. They are form factor, chipset and processor socket. So these are the three characteristics of motherboard. So what is a form factor? The form factor refers to the geometry, dimension and arrangement of electrical requirements. So this is the one factor is going to decide the size of a motherboard, shape of the motherboard, and also electronic components to be fitted on the motherboard. And next one is called chipset. So what is this chipset? The function of chipset is to coordinate data transfer between the various components on the computer. As just we have seen in the previous slide, motherboard and over it we are going to face different electronic components. So chipset is a group of chips. It is a combination of two or more chips or integrated circuit, and it is going to coordinate the data transfer between various components on the motherboard. Next, processor socket. So processor socket is a rectangular connector into which the processor is mounted vertically, or it is a square shaped connector. So as we have seen in the previous slide, so motherboard consists of microprocessor. So processor socket it is a place, it may be rectangular or a square connector, and is a place to fix our microprocessor on the motherboard. So these three are the characteristics of motherboard. In the next slide, let us see what are all different types of motherboard. So here, these are the different types of motherboard. They are XT motherboard, AT motherboard, baby AT motherboard, and ATX motherboard. See, these are all different types of motherboard of computer system. Now let us see, the first one is XT motherboard. So what is XT motherboard? XT motherboard, you can see the picture of image of this. So XT stands for extended technology, and all these motherboards are categorized into different types is based on the technology. So as and when there is a development or improvement in the field of science and technology, so they are going to come up with different motherboard with different components. So similarly, XT is the first motherboard, and this motherboard, it consists of so many different important parts. So this is one is processor socket and LIF socket, RAM slots, ISA slots, and 12-pin connector, and there were no port. See, these are the characteristics of one type of motherboard, that is XT motherboard. And examples you can see, P1 what we say, or Pentium 1 and Pentium 2 and Pentium 2 processor. All these type of computers are example for XT motherboard. Next one is AT motherboard. AT stands for advanced technology. So AT motherboard, you can see the image of this. So AT stands for advanced technology. It is a motherboard, and it has a different type of sockets called PGA socket, SD RAM slot, ISA slots, PIC slots, and 20-pin power connector. See, as and when, as I told you just now, as and when there is an improvement in the field of technology or science and technology, there are changes in different types of motherboard. So these are the major components on the motherboard, that is AT motherboard, advanced technology motherboard. The example is P3 systems or Pentium 3 system. After AT motherboard, now we have another category that is called baby AT motherboard. So that is baby AT motherboard. So what is baby AT motherboard? It is a combination of XT and AT motherboard. These two are what you have seen in the previous slide. So here baby AT is a combination of XT and AT motherboard. Suppose if we say it's a combination of both types of motherboard, and obviously it will be having different types of components or connectors or slots or sockets to connect different types of devices. So accordingly, we have a processor socket, and we have again PGA processor socket and another type of processor socket, and it has both this SD RAM slot as well as DDR RAM slots and PCI slots as well as ISA slots, and 20 as well as 20-pin power connectors, and it has 8 ports, and see and it has number of ports. So these are as it is a combination of XT and AT. These are the characteristics of baby AT motherboard, and example is P3 and P4 system. Next, in the next slide, we will see ATX motherboard. So next one is ATX motherboard. What is ATX motherboard? So it stands for Advanced Technology Extended. ATX stands for Advanced Technology Extended, and these are all the components on the motherboard, major components on the motherboard, and this is the latest motherboard. ATX is the latest motherboard, and it is MPGA processor socket, ID interface, SATA connectors, DDR RAM slots, PCI slots, and AGP slots, and again 12 and 20-pin connectors as well as ports. And example is what we have seen in the P4 or dual core, a core 2 DO, quad core, and i3, i5, i7 processors. All these comes under ATX motherboard. So as of now, ATX motherboard is the latest motherboard. So these are all different types of motherboard. Now in the next slide, we have seen different types of motherboard and what are the major components on the motherboard. So here components, first one is called a processor. This is called CPU, and here if I talk about CPU, we use the word CPU to refer the microprocessor. So and one is called BIOS, CMOS, and memory and expansion slots, disk controllers, I/O ports and interface, BUS, bus system, and SMPS. See, these are different parts, components on the motherboard. Now let us see, the first one is called the microprocessor or the processor. So you can see the image of this. So here the CPU is called as microprocessor. It is fabricated as a single integrated circuit or IC. IC chip is known as microprocessor. So what is a microprocessor? It is the main component. It will be mounted vertically on the motherboard, inside or on the processor socket. So that is the one component that is called microprocessor. And this is the place inside this we have, or it consists of ALU, that is arithmetic logic unit, control unit, as well as memory unit. So this is microprocessor. And next component we have slots. What are slots? Slots are nothing but an opening in a computer where you can insert PCB or printed circuit board. See, this is an example for slots. You can see the picture here, and here if you look at the diagram here, this is we have CPU socket and memory slots. Here we can fix the memory, and what you have seen in the previous slides about different types of slots for memory and storage device connectors. See, these are different type of slots on the motherboard, and expansion slots and back panel connectors. See, these are all different types of slots available on the motherboard, and which is the one we are going to connect different PCB or printed circuit board. So it is going to extend the capability of a computer system. Now in the next slide we have bus system. So what is a bus system? So bus, if you look at the definition, it is a collection of parallel wires that form a pathway to carry address, data, and control signals. And here, what is the meaning of bus system here, or a bus? Here, and we have seen that there are many components mounted vertically on the motherboard, and how these components are communicate among themselves, or how the communication takes place between different components on the motherboard, that is through a bus system. So what is a bus system? Normally we use the word wires in different in general. So here we don't use the word wires or cables. Here we use the word bus system. It is nothing but through that the data or address and many signals are travel through the cables or the bus system, so that it can communicate with different component on the motherboard. So this is the bus system, and you can see the bus system here. There are different types of bus system. One is called system bus and one is called external bus system. And again, this system bus, under this we have control bus, address bus, and data bus. See, these are different types of bus system available in bus system. In the next slide, we will see there are different types of bus. One is called internal bus and external bus. As we have seen in the previous slide, internal bus, is going to connect major components like processor, memory, and I/O devices. So it is called as system bus. Internal bus is also called as system bus, and it is going to connect the major components on the motherboard. And again, as I told you in the previous slide, as we have seen, we have different types of internal bus: data bus, address bus, and control bus. Now, another type of bus system is external bus system. So what is external bus system? So it connects external devices like our peripherals, our expansion slots, or I/O ports. And here, this type of bus system is going to connect the additional devices or PCB or peripherals, so that it increases the capability of computer system. So this is types of bus system. In the next slide, we will see what is power supply. Electric power is the main source of power to the computer system. Now, all of us know that if you want to work with the computer system, it needs a power supply. So the power supply is the main source of power to the computer system. So here there are two types of power supply. One is through SMPS and second one is through UPS system. Now let us see what is SMPS. Now we can see the image of the SMPS. See, this is the box or this SMPS, which is you can find on the backside or rear side of your CPU. So this is the main source of power supply, and you can see the connector here. So this is the place we are going to connect the main cable, and here it is going to take the input as 230 AC power from the main board or main power supply. Actually, what is the full form of SMPS? The SMPS stands for switch mode power supply. Switch mode power supply, and here it transfers power from a source like main power to load such as a PC. I mean, is going to supply power from the main board or AC power to the computer system. So it converts AC current to DC current needed by the system components. As we have seen, there are so many electronic components mounted on the motherboard. So from here, from SMPS, the power from the AC main, from the main board, the power comes to SMPS, and from SMPS, it goes to the different component on the motherboard. And as we have seen, there are so many electronic components mounted on it, and all the components may not require 230 volts of current for functioning. So actually this SMPS, what it does, a work of conversion, or it converting AC power to DC power or direct current and this alternative current. So whatever the power we get from the main source, from the main board, it comes to the SMPS. The SMPS converts from AC current to DC current, and only it sends or it supply the required minimum amount of current required for the different component on the motherboard. So that is the function of SMPS, that is switch mode power supply. It is one source of power to the computer system. Now let us see, second one is UPS. Now all of you might have heard UPS. You might be using UPS for your computer PC at home. So what is UPS? The UPS stands for uninterrupted power supply. See, when we are using UPS system, see, as we are working with the computer system, if there is a sudden failure in the main power, our system is going to switch off or shut down automatically or immediately. So to avoid such type of situations, we are using UPS or uninterrupted power supply. So what is the use of this? So the uninterrupted power supply or UPS, it provides a current to the power to the system in the failure of main power to the main power source. That is the use of UPS system. And here it is an electronic operator that provides emergency power to load when the input power source or typically main power fails. So that is the reason we are using UPS. If at all any failure in the main power system, automatically we are using this to run our computer system. Second one is used to protect hardware such as computers, data centers, and so on. Actually, and suppose all of you, we are aware of that. Suppose when you are working with a computer, if there is a sudden shutdown or switch of the system due to different reason, or maybe through the electrical power system failure, then it is generally is going to damage. There are chances of damaging hardware as well as software of our computer system. So to protect our hardware component as well as software, everything on the computer, which is better advisable to make use of UPS. So it provides power supply to the computer in the absence of main power, or in the event of power failure, it's continuously supply the power to the computer system. So that is the advantage of using UPS. And in UPS, there are two types of UPS. One is online UPS and second one is offline UPS. Normally, online UPS is very costlier and is not so economical. And normally, we are using online UPS in a situation or the place where we don't want to have any sort of power failure to our system. Generally, in general example we can give is in hospitals like where you have ICU and CCU system. there we cannot have any source of power failure at any point of time. So in those situations, the ICU or CCU or any division where it requires a continuous power supply, it is 24/7. So in those of situation, we are using online UPS. And second one is called offline UPS or standby UPS, that normally we use in our system for PC at home, or maybe it is example also like our inverter at home. All these are the two different types of UPS. One is online UPS, second one is offline UPS. The online UPS, it's the difference between online and offline is that in online UPS, so even though there is a main power supply is working, still is provide a continuous power supply to the computer system or devices from its battery. That is the online UPS. But in standby UPS or in offline UPS, see, the system is going to run by the main power system or the main power supply. Suppose in the event of power failure, actually is going to the UPS, will switch over to the battery mode, so that then it starts giving from its battery. So that is the main difference between online UPS and offline UPS. So far we have discussed about the chapter typical computer. Under that, we have learned the definition of motherboard, types of motherboard, different components of motherboard, and the power supply to the motherboard. And let us continue our discussion in my next session. Thank you so much.